Good morning, Rabbi Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we're on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Bet, about 2 lines up from the really wide lines. Limud of Amud Yomi for Chodesh Tevet has been sponsored by Shab and Shanaz Rabbi for health, happiness, and prosperity of their families, and anonymously sponsored for Refuah Shelema of Rachel Bat Miriam, that should have Refuah Shelema. Amen. This week's Amud Yomi has been sponsored Leilui Nishmat Yaakov Ben Shalom, that his neshama should have an aliyah by our own dear Kamran Benji, and Bezat Hashem, it should also be for Refuah Shelema of Miriam Bat Abraham Ben Osrat. Okay, we are discussing still pieces of the Mishnah of who does and who does not get included in the process of Zimun. You have 3 people who ate together. When are they considered a Zimun? When are they not considered a Zimun? And the Mishnah said that a Nochri is not considered part of Zimun. So says the Mishnah, it's a Nochri and a Shamash shachal pachod mikazai. The Gemara says Shamash shachal pachod mikazai pshita. It's pashut that if anybody, forget about the Shamash, if you ate less than kazayit, you're not considered part of the Zimun. Why do you need the Shamash, and what's the Hidush? The Gemara says, really there is no Hidush. I did the Tana Resha Kazayit, Tana Sefa Pachod Mi Kazayit. Once the Tana taught us that a Shamash that ate more than Kazayit is considered part of the Zimun, is also telling us a contrast to that if he didn't eat Kazayit, then it's not part of the Zimun. And the final point here is Menochri and Mezamenin Alav, that a non-Jew cannot be Mezamen with him. Pshita, that's Pashut. They're not within the boundaries of Zimun. Says the Gemara, talking about a ger that's in process of gerut, maybe even at the very end process of gerut, and still has not done tefillah, even though that he has gotten the mitzvot down, he's gotten even a brit milah, before tefillah, he's not considered a ger. Now, this is actually very interesting because, especially nowadays, you have a very prolonged process of gerut. It could take up to 3 years even, and because they want to make sure that the person is well adjusted in the community. Always in the beginning is exciting. It's the same thing with Baalei Tshuva. There's the 3 stages. There's the excitement that they soar high, and then there's a stage of Nefilah. They realize that now their friends, the circle of their social connections, their fun, the restaurants they used to eat, all is gone. So basically it comes down, and then they climb back up and stabilize themselves and so on. So you want them to have that process in order to, in a healthy way, be well adjusted in the community and so on. So sometimes you have these people who become big Talmidei Chachamim. I met in Philadelphia. My sister used to live there. I met their upstairs neighbor that was a big Talmidei Chacham. His name was Baruch, and he was talking to fix the eruv and this. He has become within 2 years an extremely learned individual, very committed, and he was already speaking to Rabbanim and had chavrutas with Rashi Yeshiva and so on. So you can have a person like that, and he has gotten even a brit milah, but he's not completed his process of gerut. So that is still considered not part of Zimun until they finish the Shabbat. In fact, the Gemara says, Kol ha-brachot mevarech alehen over la'asiyatan. All the brachot of mitzvot, you say the bracha before you do the mitzvah. Chutz mitevilat hager, with one exception built into the system of the tevilah of a ger tzedek. Why? Because a tevilah of ger tzedek, from until the moment before he actually dunks in the mikveh, he's still a full-fledged guy. So how is he going to say Asher Kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu ala tvila? He can't say Asher Kiddeshanu. Kiddeshanu who? It's not a yid to say bracha on his mitzvah. He may be saying brachot for chinuch, for learning, but he can't really say the bracha on that mitzvah until after he dunks, he comes up, he says a bracha, and then he dunks again. That's the exception built into the system. Hence, says the Gemara, a ger shemal velo taval, that has gotten a brit milah but hasn't done tevilah, that's the chidush of the Mishnah, that he's not considered to be a part of the minyan, or even a zimun of 3. Damar Rabbi Zera, this is the first wide line. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Zera is in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, le'olam eno ger ad yamol ve'yitbol. He's not considered halachically a ger until he has both Mila and Tefillah. Of course, we're talking about after having accepted the mitzvot. You need Kabbalat mitzvot, you need Mila, and you need Tefillah. And so long as he has not done the Tefillah, he's considered a Nochri. The Mishnah said that Nashim Avadi Vektanim, you do not include them in the men's zimun. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yossi, Katana mutal barisa mezamenin alav. A katan that is in a crib, you could consider him part of the zimun. The Gemara says, what? We just learned in the Mishnah that you cannot bring in a katan as part of the zimun. The Gemara says, no. Who the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi? He is saying, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Rabbi Asi here, really, this has to be Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Asi is saying, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, the Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, even though that we learned that a katan, a minor, a little baby, you cannot say zimun with him. Aval osinoto snif lasara, but you could make him a sniff, a tag along with the asara. In other words, if you have 3 and one of them is the baby, you cannot say zimun. But if you have 9 already, that means you have 3. That gives you the platform of zimun already. So all you need is 7 more to say Hashem's name. Say Baruch Elokeinu Sha'achalnu Mishelo instead of saying Baruch Sha'achalnu. So it says on that, if one of them is a baby, fine. You already have 9 adults. So one of them is a little kid. That you could already consider him part of the zimun. Sorry? So we're going to get to that in just a few moments, right? In general, if you could, in the Masav Yanai Melech, we'll get to that. Says the Gemara, V'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Tish'a ve'eved mistarfin. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi also said, 9 people and an eved, and here we're not talking about the eved Ivri, talking about the eved Kenani. They're considered mistarfim la'asara. Now, Evet Kenani would get a Brit Milah, would get a Tvila, and he would be obligated to do any mitzvah that a woman is chayav as well. He would be patur from mitzvah aseh shazman grama, the positive mitzvah that are time-bound. That Evet also is absolved from because he's obligated to be serving the master. So anything that's time-bound, he would be patur, but he'll do the rest of the mitzvah. He has to keep Shabbat, he has to keep Kashrut, all of those things he has to keep. So says Rabbi Shimon Levi, you could consider him the 10th person in a zimun of asara. The Gemara right away jumps at it and says, wait a second. We learned this story, a beautiful story from Rabbi Eliezer, Ben Chorkanus, Maaseh Rabbi Eliezer, shenichnas lebet HaKnesset. Rabbi Eliezer one day came to Bet Knesset, they were not a minyan. They needed a minyan. And he freed his eved. Now the halacha is eved Kenani. If the master lets them go, if you free an Eved Kanani, he becomes a full-fledged Jew. Right? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer needed a minyan once, and he freed his Eved, and he completed the minyan. What does that tell you? That without freeing your Eved, he is not considered part of 10. So how in the world are you saying, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that he's considered part of the minyan, just being the 10th Asiri? Says the Gemara, Shichrer in, lo shichrer, lo. It's clear from this story of Rabbi Eliezer that only with freeing him you could count him as part of the minyan. As him being an Eved, you cannot consider him part of the minyan. Says the Gemara, Terei is terichu. That story was different. He came in with two of his avadim, and they needed two people. There were 8 with him. So he freed one of them. Now they are 9 Jews, and the 10th one was considered the Eved. This is how Rabbi Yeshua would answer this dilemma. Shichrer chad v'nafik bechad. He freed one, and he used the other one as the 10th man. Vehechi avid hachis. The Gemara now stops and just challenges the story. He says, wait a second, how can you even do that? There is a prohibition against freeing an Eved Kanani, because the pasuk says, "V'amar Rabbi Yehuda, kol hameshachrer avdo over ba'aseh." Rabbi Yehuda paskin that if you let your Eved go, you're over on an avera. This is really a machloket in Masechet Gitin. In Daf Lamed Chet, Amud Bet, the Gemara has machloket Tanaim over there, whether or not, when the pasuk says le'olam bahem ta'avodu, says you should always work with them. Is it a mitzvah or is it reshut? Does it mean that you could keep them forever if you want to, or does it mean that you have to keep them even if you don't want to? You can't let them go free. Which one does it mean? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva was machmir, and Rabbi Yehuda paskin like Rabbi Akiva. So Rav Yehuda paskins like Rabbi Akiva over there in Masechet Gitin Lamed Chet. Kol hameshachrer avdo over be'aseh. If you free your Eved, you're in transgression of a mitzvat aseh, a positive command. Shenemar le'olam bahem ta'avodu. They should forever keep them. So the Gemara says, how in the world he's allowed to let him free deliberately? Says the Gemara, lidvar mitzvah shani. When it's for dvar mitzvah, it's different. He did it because they needed a minyan, so he did it for a mitzvah, and that's fine. So the Gemara says, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because mitzvah haba ba'averai. This is a mitzvah that's coming with an avera. You can't do a mitzvah when it includes when it brings an avera with it. Right? This is the same Gemara that we mentioned in Baba Kaba Sadidal and Amud Aleph of saying a bracha on something you stole. Gemara says that's a disgrace. It's a blasphemy. It's not a bracha. So how can you do a mitzvah that's coming with the avera? Says the Gemara, no, mitzvah de Rabim Shani. This is not his personal mitzvah of Rabbi Eliezer, but this is a mitzvah that is a need for the community, for the kahal, to have a minyan. And that's a much stronger level of mitzvah, and therefore it was mutar for him to do it. Okay, there's a lot to be spoken about this. This is, of course, the Moshe Feinstein uses this for the issue of tefillah b'tzibur being a full-fledged mitzvah d'Rabbanan. He holds it's not a nice thing to daven b'tzibur, but rather it is a full-fledged obligation that the person has to daven. Otherwise, what's the heter that he's going to free his Eved for what? For just a nice thing. Of course, it's not a nice thing. You're obligated to daven b'tzibur and so on. There's a lot to be spoken about this story of Rabbi Eliezer and his Eved, but nevertheless, we do what we do and we go on. Says the Gemara, another teaching of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is a person should always get up in the morning early and come to Bet Knesset in order to merit and be part of the first 10 people who come to the shul. Because even if 100 people come afterwards, he gets the schar of all of them. Amazing, right? So the more people come, the more schar you get. It's exponential, right? So wait a second. Schar kulam sal kadatach. You think he grabs away the schar of everyone else? No one else is going to get schar that day. Ela ema notinin lo schar keneget kulam. They give him schar equivalent of everyone else combined. The Marsha explains because you are part of bringing the Shekhinah in the shul that morning and that day. It's not just for Shacharit, for Mincha also. Of course, Shacharit it's a bigger thing. And once you bring the Shekhinah, every person that comes there is using that, and that schar is due to you. So exponentially it grows. The more people come, the more you have on your account, says the Marsha. Says the Gemara.
Is it only for prayer services or also like studying?
Studying as well, of course, because the Gemara earlier on we had that when you learn and you're one person, the schar is very different than when you learn and you are two people, and two is different than five, and five is different than 10, right? 10 is Shekhinah is makdim uba, and that's good. That greatness of learning. Again, this is the Zoom is very convenient, maybe, but at the same time, and many people can't make it, so there you have it. But at the same time, when you come in person, the shefa of the Torah is a totally different thing because you're part of the, especially if it's a minyan of asara and more, it grows exponentially. Says the Gemara. Rav Huna, Amar Rav Huna, Tish'aba Aron Mistarfin. 9 people with an Aron Kodesh, they are mistaref to be considered 10. The Gemara says, what? Amar le Rav Nachman ve'Aron Gavrau. What, the Aron is a person? Ela Amar Rav Huna. So this is not exactly what Rav Huna said. You know what Rav Huna said? Tish'an nir'in ka'asara mistarfin. If you have 9 people who look like 10, then you could consider them as a minyan in this regard for our purposes of benching. So says the Gemara, Amrilah ki mechanfi v'amrilah ki mebatri. What do you mean a 9 that looks like 10? Sometimes 9 looks like 10, sometimes it doesn't look like 10. So there are those who say if they are cohesively together, then it looks more and it looks like 10. But if they are scattered not, and there are those who say exactly the opposite, that if they're scattered, it looks like more people than when they're together. So that's the machloket, what exactly Rav Huna meant. Amar Rav Ami, Shnayim v'Shabbat mistarfin. So in the name of Rav Ami, that Shnayim, 2 people eating, and it's Shabbat, you could consider them zimun. Shabbat is the 3rd. Says the Gemara, what? Amar Rav Nachman, again, Rav Nachman challenges. This is Shabbat. Gavrahu, Shabbat is a person? Shabbat is not a person. Even though that, again, you have to understand, we have this in other concepts in halacha. For instance, the Gemara in Masechet Daf Zayin, which is really paskin in Eben Ezer Siman Samech Bet, for the halachot of Sheva Brachot, for halachot of Sheva Brachot, you need a new person in every Suda for you to be able to say the whole 7 brachot, right? You need panim chadashot. And we paskin of Shabbat, the Suda of Shabbat is considered panim chadashot, and that by itself is considered something that adds to the simcha. You could say Sheva Brachot. Here again is a sugi of zimun, but nevertheless, Rav Nachman challenges, says Shabbat Gavrau. Shabbat is not a person. Ela Amar Rav Ami. Rav Ami said, no. What he meant is Shene Talmidei Chachamim hamechadedin zeh et zeh ba'alacha misarfin. 2 Talmidei Chachamim that they sharpen each other and they complete each other in halacha, you could consider them as 3. Their level is higher than 2 regular people. If they are, according to the understanding of Rabbi Asher on this Gemara Rosh, he understands that if they're talking and learning during the Seudah, that's considered like 3 people. The chashivut of that Seudah is considered like a chashivut of 3 people eating together. So,
Shabbat only? Or?
No. Machvi Rav Chisda kegon anav Rav Sheshet. Rav Chisda would show himself a Rav Sheshet. Like me and Rav Sheshet. And that's beautiful to see that even Rav Sheshet held the same way. Machvi Rav Sheshet kegon anav Rav Chisda. Both of them showed to the other one, said, me and him, you're considered that type of a group. Now, Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshet were exact opposites. Both of them are massive Talmidei Chachamim. There's a whole lot to be said about both of them. But Rav Chisda was Oker Harim, the Gemara says. Rav Chisda was, the Gemara Masechet Eruvin, the Gemara says that Rav Chisda was Oker Harim. He was a tremendous mind, a very deep and analytic mind. And Rav Sheshet was Sinai. He was an extremely resourceful mind that he knew everything. So Rav Chisda didn't necessarily have the vast knowledge of Rav Sheshet, but he had such a deep and complicated mind, an analytic mind, that he could deal with every piece of information in a very deep and complete way. Rav Sheshet was more of a baki, that he knew everything that there is out there to know. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Katan Poreach Mezamenin Alav. Rabbi Yochanan said, a Katan Poreach, you could consider him part of the Zimur. What is a Katan Poreach? Now, we mentioned before that for a person to be considered halachically an adult, the main thing that he has to have is shte sa'arot, a physical sign of bagrut, of growth and maturity, is growing hair in makom erva, shne sa'arot, two long enough hairs that are there to stay, so to speak, that it shows that this person is maturing physically. The body is blossoming physically to an adulthood. So that is the main thing. The 13 years of age or the 12 years of age for female would be a sign whether or not those two sa'arot you could count or not. In other words, if you have those shte sa'arot prior to this age limit, you would say, well, these sa'arot are not there to stay, perhaps. They're shuman be'alma. Sometimes you have some hair growth and it's not there to stay. It's not a sign of anything. It's just a growth. And the Gemara says, therefore, the sign of a sa'arot that are there to stay would be the age. But really, the ikar, the main part of bar or bat mitzvah is the shnei sa'arot, not the age. Now, we have a chazakah de Rava, which is known throughout Shas, that Rava said is chazakah when a person is of age, of 12 for female and 13 for men, you could already assume that they already have shnei sa'arot. Chazakah, usually they have it. So therefore, chazakah, and this is known throughout Shas as chazakah de Rava, because Rava said it, it's the chazakah of Rava. Now, the way we paskin, just in parentheses, is that for biblical things, we don't rely on this. For rabbinic things, we do. For instance, a bachur that becomes bar mitzvah tonight, and tonight is Leil Shabbat, and you want to say Kiddush, right? You want to say Kiddush. Can he be the one to say the Kiddush for everyone else? You say, well, he's bar mitzvah, right? But then your Amud Yomi fellow says, no, we learned that Kiddush is the Oraita Kiddush of the Friday night. And this bachur is only bar mitzvah because of chazakah de Rava. We don't really know if he is an adult. So maybe he shouldn't say Kiddush. Or when he wants to read the parasha of Zachor, which is a biblical parasha, can he be the one being motzi the tzibur reading parasha Zachor or anything that's biblical? That would become a problem. So it says the Gemara over here is one of the only Gemaras that's backwards. It's the other way around. That if you have the shnei sa'arot and you don't have the age, you're prior to bar mitzvah, you're not 13 yet, but you have the shnei sa'arot, which usually we would say, well, discard it because it's shuman ba'alma. Over here, says the Gemara, we don't say that. The Gemara here, if you have katan poreach, a katan in age is a minor in age, but it's poreach is flew, is jumped to have the simane bagrut, the simane na'arut. Says the Gemara, Mezamenin alav. Rabbi Yochanan says you could consider him part of the zimun. Tarna mehachi. We also learn the Braita. Katan shevish tesarot mezamenin alav. A katan that has tesarot, even though that he's not of age, you could consider him part of the zimun. And if he didn't bring tesarot yet, and mezamenin alav, then you cannot consider him part of the zimun. Ve'en medaktakim bekatan. And you don't have to be very careful with the katan. The master says, wait a second. Hakufa kashan. This is a contradiction within the same sentence. Amrat, you said in the beginning, Hevish tesarot in, lo hevish tesarot, lo. You first begin by saying that the only determining factor, the criteria we're looking for is tesarot. Then you say you don't have to be careful with the katan. So what does that mean? Says the Gemara, isn't it coming to bring in katan poreach? That when you say en medaktekin bekatan, that means you have the person that has the simanim, but he doesn't have. You don't have to be medaktekpo. Rashi says im balichlal shanim olo. So long as he has the simanim, even though that he doesn't have the age of 13 full years, you don't have to be medaktek with him. Even though that in other scenarios, in other cases, you would be medaktek. Say no, he's not an age, so therefore he maybe is just shuman rana. Over here, you don't have to be medaktek, says the Gemara, and you could consider him as part of the zimun even prior to the age. So says the Gemara, "Ve'let hilcheta kechol hanishmateta." Halacha is not like any of these things that we learned. We said all these brightness. The Gemara oftentimes does this to show that we are aware of these brightness. We have seen them. The halacha is not like any of them. And ki hadamar Rav Nachman. The halacha is like Rav Nachman. That katan hayodea lemi mevarchin mezamenin alav. You don't have to wait for him to be shte sarot, even if he is a real minor. And forget about shte sarot. He doesn't have shte sarot. You could still have a scenario, and this is halacha, to be considering them as part of zimun, so long as they understand who you're saying birkat hamazon for. They understand the concept of Hashem and us thanking him for the food that we have. So long as they understand that, even if they're little kids, 7 years old, 7, somewhere between 6 and 9, usually 7 and up, that's the age that they understand what's happening with brachot, and that's the time that you could say bracha and include them as part of the zimun as well, says Rab Nachman. Abaye and Rava, the Gemara says a story. Abaye and Rava were basically the same age, same generation. They were little kids, and Abaye was a yatom. He did not have a father or a mother. His father passed away before he was born, and his mother passed at childbirth, so he was adopted. He was adopted by actually Rabbi. So he's a little kid. He's sitting there. Rabbi is with him, and they're sitting in front of Rabbi. So Amalu Rabbi said, "Let me be barchin. Let me bench. Who are we saying the bracha for?" So Amalu Rachmana. They said for Hashem, right? So he said, "Rachmana hechayativ." And where is Rachmana? Where is Hashem? Right? And they didn't have Uncle Moshe songs to say Hashem is here, Hashem is there, right? So what they did was, Rava achvi l'shmet halala. Rava just inside the house showed up there. He said Hashem is up there. Abaye nafik lebara. Abaye took Rava out, and he showed Shamayim. He said Hashem is all over in Shamayim. So says the Gemara, Amar lehu Rava. Rava said, Harvaichu Rabbanan habitu. Both of you are going to become chachamim. So again, it's a very tender little age, and they already had the understanding of lemim mevarchim, and that's what the Gemara says. a kid like that understands, you could have them part of the zimun. The Amri Inshi, as the people say, busin mikatve yedia. That if you have even a farmer really knows the produce, how good it's going to turn out at the end, already from the very beginning, says this fruit is going to be amazing. If you know them, really they have all of those qualities from a small size. In human being also is the same way. The midot of a person, you can really see it. Their talents, their qualities could be detected and known already from their childhood. Says the Gemara, 2 dots. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Rav Shmuel bar Shilat. Mishmeh the Rav. We learned in the name of Rav. Tish'a achlu dagan ve'echad achal yerek. How about if you have 9 people who ate bread, and one person, the 10th guy, did not eat bread? He just had some vegetables, had some fruits. Can you be mesarfim la'asara, or does it have to be every one of the 10 has to have had bread? So says the Gemara, in the name of Rav, if 9 people had bread and one person just had yerek, vegetables, fruits, you could consider him as part of the 10 and say zimun avasara. Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera said, "Ba'ai mine mi Rav Yehuda." I asked Rav Yehuda, "Shemona mahu shiv'a mahu." I asked this: is it Rav who said 9? You are his Talmud, right? He's asking Rav Yehuda, the Talmud of Rav. He says, so what's the halacha? What does your Rebbe Rav hold about? Not 9, but 8. Not 8, but 7. Is it 9 but dafka and only one person could have had vegetables and fruits? Or is it even more than one, even 2 or 3? So Amaleh Loshana. And he answered me, Rav Yehuda answered me, Rav Zera, doesn't make a difference. Even if you have 2 or even you have 3 people who ate fruits and vegetables, you can still consider them part of the zimun of asara, so long as 7 people have eaten bread. So says the Gemara, Amar Eloshena, Shisha Vadailog Mibayali. Says 6, I for sure did not have the question. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Shapir Avdat, Deloi Bayala. Good thing that you don't have the question on that. Now here, there is a difference in Girsaot. There are those who learn that this is a regret that he had, but nevertheless, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, good thing that you didn't have a question. That means it's not a question. Why? Hatam tamamai. Why is it the reason that you could consider 1, 2, or 3, even part of the zimun, even though that they didn't eat bread? Says the Gemara, Mishum de ikar ruba, hachanami ikar ruba. There you have rov. Here also you have rov. Out of 10, so long as you have 6 people who ate bread, you have majority. So therefore, says the Gemara, you didn't have to ask it even. Says the Gemara, the ihu savar, and he thought that maybe it's not such a big, it's not such a simple thing, because ruva de minkar bayinan. Maybe we need a rov hanikar. That means it's not sufficient to have just plain rov majority, but you need a ruba de minkar. You need a rov, a majority that is clear majority. When you have 10 people and only 6 of them ate, 6-4 is not so clear. But 7-3, that's a pretty clear majority, and that's maybe what we need. And of course, that is the halacha. Up to 3 people, if they haven't had bread yet, but they had other things, fruits and vegetables, they could be part of the zimun, but 7 people should have bread in the zimun of asara. Says the Gemara.
Would that be combined with a child as well? Minor? It could be combined with a child as well with the minor? Or one of the 7 is a child, the minor? That was looking at.
So says the because now the ruva de minkas 6 is rov, but it's the minimum of rov that you have. Again, this also becomes very much nogea. For instance, you have a minyan, and you want to say na chazarat shas, right? How many of them should have finished Shemona Esrei for you to be able to answer, for you to be able to say dvarim should be kedusha? When you have, of course, a minyan, but some of them can't talk, right? Some of them can't talk for reasons that they are davening and still not available to answer. So can you say it with having, 6? Because you have a majority of minyan answering, or do you have to have a ruva de minkar? So the Shara Tshuva and Or Chaim really discusses this, and this is a very large machloket within the Achronim, and it all boils down to the same thing. Do you need a clear rov, or do you need just the bare minimum rov? So 51%, is it enough, or is it not enough? You have this concept, you have it by Dinei Nefashot, right? Let's say if you have a betin of 23, right? So if you have equal votes, aside from one that is tipping the scale, and what you want to do is not charge money, you want to kill a person, right? You're talking about capital punishment, one extra vote would not be sufficient. If you have 11 people saying that he is good to go, and you have 12 people saying not, that's not good enough, because again, you need more than just tipping the scale. You need something that's more clear of majority. So again, I'm not trying to compare that with this, but at the same time, you need a clear majority, says the Gemara, maybe, and therefore the 6 would not be a clear majority. We'll B'ezras Hashem come back to this, and then the next part of the Gemara is a fascinating story with Yanai HaMelech, who killed all of the Chachamim, and we're going to discuss B'ezras Hashem in the days to come.